3 weeks ago, the United States launched the largest military operation in the Middle East since the Iraq War. Operation Epic Fury. Coordinated airstrikes with Israel against Iran. Nuclear sites, military installations, leadership compounds. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei killed. Military infrastructure across the country destroyed. Iran's response was to do the one thing Washington couldn't prevent: close the Strait of Hormuz. 15 million barrels of crude stranded in the Persian Gulf. Oil spiking toward $120. Mines laid across the world's most critical shipping lane. Ships attacked, crews killed. And then Donald Trump did something no American president has ever done from a position of supposed strength. He went on social media and begged his allies to send warships. Not asked, not coordinated through NATO channels, begged on Truth Social. The response from America's closest allies, the nations that fought beside the United States in every conflict since World War II, was devastating in its unanimity. Australia said no. Germany said no. Japan said not yet. France hesitated. Poland refused. Sweden refused. Spain refused. The UK, the special relationship, the nation that stood with America at Normandy and in Afghanistan and in Iraq, offered mine-hunting drones and said it would not be drawn in. 72 hours. Every major ally, every front, the same answer. And then Trump posted again, this time saying he never needed them in the first place. In 72 hours, the most powerful nation on earth launched a war, begged for help, got rejected by every ally it has, and then pretended it had never asked. That sequence is the story of American alliance credibility in March 2026. It didn't happen by accident. It was built brick by brick, insult by insult, tariff by tariff. And the architect of the collapse is the same man now wondering why nobody answered the phone. To understand why allies said no in March 2026, you need to understand what Trump did to each of them in the 12 months before he needed them. Canada, 25% tariffs, escalating to 35%, then threatened at 100%. Prime Minister called governor. The country told it should become the 51st state. Trade negotiations canceled over a television commercial. A bridge Canada built at its own expense, threatened with blockade. Canada designated a national security threat under a law the Supreme Court later struck down. Denmark demanded to sell Greenland. When Denmark refused, Trump declined to rule out military force. His administration reportedly ordered invasion contingency plans when European allies deployed to defend Greenland from that implied threat. Trump imposed tariffs on every nation that sent troops. United Kingdom. Prime Minister Starmer called weak with no spine. Demanded Britain overhaul its food safety standards in 30 days to align with U.S. requirements. Demanded Britain sanction its own technology companies doing business with China. Demanded discounted North Sea oil to help American midterm politics. Then, when the Iran war started, publicly dismissed Britain's offer to send aircraft carriers, and days later demanded Britain send ships to Hormuz. Germany, repeatedly criticized for defense spending, threatened with tariffs, dismissed as unreliable. When Germany refused military participation at Hormuz, Trump called it a foolish mistake, forgetting it was his year of attacks that made the refusal politically inevitable in Berlin. Japan, auto tariffs under Section 232, constant trade pressure, now asked to send self-defense forces into an active war zone in defiance of a pacifist constitution that exists because of what happened the last time Japan sent military forces abroad. Australia, insulted on camera. They need us more than we need them. Their alignment with Canada and the UK dismissed as a loser coalition. Australia rejected the Hormuz request outright, a flat rejection from an ally that participated in every major American military operation for 8 decades. The pattern is identical every time. Trump insults, Trump threatens, Trump demands. And when the crisis arrives and the coalition has to form, he discovers the goodwill he spent a year burning was the exact resource the moment required. Let me walk you through the Hormuz 72-hour sequence in detail, because the timeline almost defies belief. Saturday, March 15th, Trump posts on Truth Social demanding that China, France, Japan, South Korea, the UK, and others send warships to Hormuz. His framing, they benefit from the oil that transits the strait, therefore they have an obligation to help secure it. The logic of a man who has never held an alliance together, running into the reality of how alliances actually work. Hours later, a follow-up post. Countries that receive oil through Hormuz need to step up and provide naval escorts. The implication being that failure to do so makes them free riders, a characterization that lands particularly badly in capitals that had just been tariffed, insulted, or threatened with annexation. Sunday, March 16th. Bloomberg reports the response ranges from caution to ambivalence, if not outright rejection. Australia and several European nations reject the request directly, not conditionally, directly. Monday, March 17th. Germany's defense minister, no military participation. Japan cites constitutional constraints. France hesitates. The UK signals mine-hunting drones, well short of the naval escort Trump asked for. Tuesday, March 18th. Trump reverses course entirely. He posts, "We no longer need or desire the NATO countries' assistance. We never did." Likewise, Japan, Australia, or South Korea. Saturday, "Please send ships." Tuesday, "We never needed you anyway." The same day he declared he never needed allies, he mused about the U.S. walking away from providing security for the strait entirely, the very mission he had demanded allies join 72 hours earlier. His own National Counterterrorism Center director resigned, publicly stating Iran had never posed a threat to the United States. And behind closed doors, Pentagon officials were warning that without Allied support, the U.S. doesn't have enough mine-clearing capability to safely reopen Hormuz. The allies Trump told to go home are the same allies whose mine-hunting technology the Pentagon desperately needs. Begged for help, was refused, declared he never needed help, now trying to do alone what he couldn't get allies to do with him, while lacking the specific military capability that would make it possible. Subscribe right now, because what Carney was doing during these exact same 72 hours is the sharpest contrast in modern geopolitics. While Trump was cycling through begging, rejection, and denial on Truth Social, Mark Carney was in Yellowknife, not posting, building. He announced $35 billion in Arctic military infrastructure, forward operating locations, hardened airfields, ammunition depots, northern operational support hubs designed to project force across the Northwest Passage. Then he flew to Norway for NATO's cold response exercise above the Arctic Circle. Signed a comprehensive strategic partnership covering Arctic defense, space, satellite communications, and critical minerals. Held a Nordic summit with the leaders of Denmark, Sweden, Finland, and Iceland. Then headed to London to meet Prime Minister Starmer at Downing Street. In the same 3 weeks that Trump went from demanding Allied ships to declaring he never needed allies, Carney deepened defense agreements with Denmark, Norway, and the UK, attended NATO military exercises in person, met with every major Arctic and Northern European leader, and committed more money to Arctic defense than Canada has ever spent. Carney's language is precise, strategic autonomy, strong enough, in his defense minister's words, to be a partner of choice rather than a dependent. Partner of choice, 3 words that redefine the entire architecture of the relationship. Not unconditional ally. A partner who chooses, and who can choose differently if the relationship stops being reciprocal. One leader posting, one leader building. The world watching both, deciding who to stand next to. Now let's talk about the deeper pattern. Because what happened at Hormuz isn't an isolated event. It's the inevitable product of a strategic logic that every ally independently calculated, and every ally reached the same conclusion. The cost of standing next to Trump is higher than the cost of standing apart. Here's the calculation every ally made. If you send ships and something goes wrong. Mines hit a vessel, crews are killed. You've joined a war your citizens didn't vote for, started by a president who spent a year insulting you, with no guarantee he won't turn on you tomorrow. You absorb the risk, you absorb the casualties, and you get nothing reliable in return. If you don't send ships, Trump insults you for 72 hours and then declares he never needed you. No real sanctions, no strategic cost. Trump has threatened and retracted so many times that the threats themselves have lost meaning. American credibility has been so thoroughly degraded that allies calculate, correctly, that there is no meaningful downside to saying no. They were insulted when they cooperated. They're insulted when they don't. The insult is constant, regardless of behavior. So behavior becomes irrelevant. Self-interest becomes the only input. Self-interest for every ally right now points away from Washington. Canada is building trade relationships with China, Europe, and Asia while constructing Arctic defense independently. The UK is deepening Commonwealth ties with Canada and Australia. Europe is accelerating euro-based financial alternatives and independent defense capability. Japan released strategic oil reserves while refusing ships. Australia rejected the Hormuz request outright. Every ally is hedging against America, not because they became enemies, because they can no longer predict what America will do tomorrow. And in international relations, unpredictability is functionally identical to unreliability. Unreliability, over time, becomes irrelevance. Here is the dimension that should concern every American, regardless of how they voted, because this one transcends politics. The Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, has been the backbone of Western intelligence since 1946. It is the reason American agencies can monitor Russian submarine movements in the Pacific, intercept communications across the Middle East, and maintain Arctic surveillance. The invisible infrastructure of American national security. 4 of the 5 members have been publicly insulted within the past year. Canada, 51st state, Governor Carney. UK, weak Starmer, no spine. Australia, loser coalition. New Zealand caught in the broader pattern of alliance neglect. Five Eyes operates on trust, on the foundational assumption that shared intelligence will never be weaponized for political purposes. Trump has already threatened to pull intelligence cooperation from allies as a bargaining chip in trade negotiations. He used intelligence access as leverage. When you weaponize intelligence, you don't just strain the relationship, you poison the logic of the system. Every Five Eyes partner now calculates, is what we share today going to be used as leverage against us tomorrow? If the answer is possibly yes, and after the past year, no honest analyst can say it's definitely no, the rational response is to quietly limit what flows to Washington. Not withdraw, limit. In ways that don't generate headlines, but steadily reduce American visibility into the threats that matter most. Canada's defense minister said it explicitly. Strategic autonomy means being strong enough to be a partner of choice. The most dangerous phrase in alliance history, because the system was never built on choice. It was built on necessity, on the assumption that the U.S. would always be the indispensable anchor. If allies discover they have genuine choices, and Carney spent a year building those choices across trade, energy, Arctic defense, and intelligence, the anchor becomes optional, and optional anchors don't hold. Let me bring this to your front door, because this isn't happening in marble chambers and diplomatic cables. It's happening in your wallet, your tank, and your security. Gas prices. Hormuz is still closed, oil near $100, and the allied coalition that could help reopen it just told Trump no. The administration that promised energy dominance started a war that closed the world's most critical oil choke point without the allied support needed to reopen it. National security. The U.S. is fighting in the Middle East without a coalition for the first time in modern history. Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan all had allied participation. This one has American and Israeli forces alone. the cost falls entirely on American shoulders. And the mine clearing capability the Navy needs most was decommissioned 6 months ago. Your dollar, Canada routing trade through China, Europe, and the Pacific. The EU accelerating euro-based infrastructure to bypass dollar clearing. The Commonwealth framework between Canada, the UK, and Australia processing trade without touching Wall Street. Each move reduces global demand for the dollar. A weaker dollar means everything you import costs more, not through a single crash, but through the slow, compounding arithmetic of reduced global demand. The CUSMA review opens in July. Canada enters with WTO cases, a Supreme Court ruling declaring Trump's tariffs illegal, and alternative partners across 3 continents. The U.S. enters from a position of diplomatic isolation it hasn't faced in 80 years. Here is the map as it stands today, March 2026. Hormuz closed. Allied help refused. Iran war ongoing without a coalition. Oil near $100. Canada building trade and defense architecture independently, entering the July CUSMA review from a position of unprecedented leverage. UK, drones instead of warships, deepening Commonwealth ties with Canada and Australia, reorienting toward Ottawa. Europe, refusing military participation, accelerating independent financial and defense architecture. Asia, Japan releasing reserves while refusing ships. Australia, rejecting outreach. South Korea, uncommitted. Every Asian ally running the same calculation. Five Eyes, intact on paper, increasingly conditional in practice. 4 of 5 members publicly insulted and each quietly reassessing how much.
નાળિયેર લાવ્યા છે મનોજભાઈ કે નથી લાવ્યા
તમારો આવી ગયો
એટલે હું એમ કહું મારો છે
આ છોકરાનો લે બેટા હા મુદા એનો આવી ગયો
વાહ શેઠ વાહ હવે ખાઈ ગયો
આ ભાઈ તાત્કાલિક શાક બનાવી દે બધું પાછું પડ્યું કાનાએ લાકડા નાખ્યા
હવે તાપ થાય છે
હવે તાપ થાય છે કાનો આગો જાય છે
શાકમાં ઉકાળો આવશે હવે એટલે સલાડ કાપો બેઠા
આ છે ઠંડી ઠંડી ચાય
કહો આ શેઠને સખાડો પેલા
ના ના
કડવું શેઠ સાખો
કાકા
થઈ જશે
બરોબર
બરોબર
આ છે સાઈઝ પોલભાઈની સાઈઝ કેટલાક ઉતારવું લા એ
ચા ખાવું પડે
પાણી તો જોશે જ હો
પાણી આ ભેડ્યું આ પીડ્યું થોડા બટાકા છડવા
રસાવાળું કરજો ફૂલ
તમે તો એવું
હા મનોજભાઈ તમે કયો એવું બની જાય રસાવાળું
આ ટોસ્ટ ને ખાલેલું છે ના
છેલ્લે મંદિર તો આવે જ ને
કોઈ છોકરો બોલો પર દે નથી ને
વાહ મનોજભાઈ વાહ.
બસ 4 મિનિટ બસ થઈ રહી.
આમ બાર માગા જાઓ
હું તો જાયલીને થાકી ગયો.
ભલે જાજી જાઓ
4 મિનિટ થઈ ગઈ. એટલે અમને શું વાત છે બધા સંભળા પહેર ને સંભળા નહીં લાવ્યો ક્યાં છે પહેરતો એલા સંભળા સંભળા પહેરતો કાળા પગ બગડ છે
બહુ ટેન્શન ન લેવાનું કે
કાળા ને ધોળા ને ધોઈડ વાળા ને બધું યાદ રાખે કા અરે આ તો કામે છોડી તેને પહેરો ને હમણાં મોદન બધું તે દઈ દીધું ડામે જેવું થાય છે
એ ઘરે ધોઈ નાખે.
આ જો વોશિંગ મશીન ધોઈ નાખો થઈ ગયો વોશિંગ મશીન મૂંદ રાખતો કાના મને ઘરે લઈ જાઓ મને
ઘરે ધોય.
કાના ઘરે લઈ જાઓ ઠેરા
એવું છે.
વિશ્વાસ માણા કે એસ કે ભાઈ કહેવાય
આમ જાઓ ને આમ બધી
બોલો.
આમ જાઓ આમ આમ
ભાઈ સંતુભાઈ કેમ
ચંદુભાઈ મનોજ કુમારે કીધું ને એટલે ઈ કે કચેરીમાં છે
હિરે જેદી
આને મફતમાં તો દાવને
કાના નો જેવું
કાના એનો કીધું
તમાર ભાઈઓ પેલા હોય.
બતાવો કાના બતાવો કાનો
આને આ કાનો હે. આને ચંદુભાઈ ને કીધું નહીં.
આપણે નહોતું કીધું ચંદુભાઈ એવું નથી ચંદુભાઈ ને
આપણે-
ચંદુભાઈ આવ્યા નહીં
ચંદુભાઈ નથી કીધું આ મૂર્ખો.
આ શેઠનો છોકરો છે
એટલે વડીલ બાકી રહી ગયા હતા.
આ વડીલનો માવો દેખાડો
આ માવા લવર છે.
માવો તો પહેલા જોયું લવર તો તમે ઘણા બધા રહી પણ આવા માવા લવર તમે પહેલી વાર
ખાવાનું ન હોય ને તો હાલે એક કેમ
આ તમારે પેન્ટો ભાઈ પરમાર ખાવાનું નહીં હોય ને તો ચાલશે મિત્રો આ ભાઈને પણ માવો તો જોશે
તો પહેલા જ
માવાના બંધાણી છે. અરે
આ બોલ બાજો ને
આ ડુંગળી સુધારતા સુધારતા રોવે છે.
હજી અડધી કોઈ જાય
નિલેશભાઈ કાકડી સાકી સાકીને નાખજો.
લીલો કરતો હું એમને ધરી ગયો
કારણ કે પેલા કડવી ગઈ એટલે વાંધો નહીં.
એટલા પેલા નો થાય
એટલે આમને અહીં રાખ્યું હતું તેલ તો લઈ લીધું. રાખ્યું હતું.
નાની લીધો તો હરી કરે
હાલા બે કોણ
હાલ કાઢા લે. કાકા તમારે પણ યુટ્યુબમાં
લાઈટ રાખીને ઉભા રહ્યો કામ
આ તો ચાલુ ને ચાલુ રહી.
કાકા ઘડીક લાઈટ રાખો આવું આવું મારે ઓળખાણ કેટલી છે બીજા 2-5 જણા ભેગા મને લાગે કોણ છે મળી ગયા ને
એવું છે.
મને ભેગા થયા હતા શું કરું મારે
આ અમારા કાકા છે.
બેહારો સાહેબ ઓલા તો કર.
આનો છે એમ?
ઓ ભલે ઠોક. મેં કહ્યું ના એ ના આવડે સમજો ને.
કાકા છે આને કે કાકા આવે છે. રામભાઈ તમે છે. તું ખાયદા રાખજો હમણાં પછી તારે જ ઓલું તીખું જ લાગશે. કાકડી ખાવી છે? અહીંયા અમારે શાક હાલે એ તીખો હોય છે એટલે એ પ્રમાણે નાખજો. એ ફૂલ તીખો હોય છે, ફૂલ તીખો હોય છે એમ કહું, ફૂલ તીખો. અહીંયા અમારે શાક બને છે, અહીંયા અમારે પૂરી, અહીં સંભારાનું કટિંગ, સંભારાનું કટિંગ. હા મીઠું પાણી જો ઓલામાં, ઓલામાં મીઠું હોય, ઓલામાં મીઠું હોય. ત્યારબાદ હાલો
અરે સાહેબ સગી છે નાખી દો, સગી નાખી દો મને તો થાય.
તો કેટલુંક નાખવું પછી?
હજી બટાકા જ નહીં શેડવાના, હજી આટલું પાણી નહીં થાય, તમે જોઈજો.
તો આ બીજો જગ ભરી આવવું પડશે. હાલો ઘરે. હા તે કયો એ 50 જણાનું શાક થયું.
હવે હજી બટાકા હાવ કાસા નાખી ચડવાનું ભાત.
એટલે તમારે પરસાદી થઈ ગઈ? બસ તો ફોન કોનો આવ્યો?
મારા હાડુ મહિનો કે ક્યાં વહી ગયા
અમે કઈ આવી નહીં.
પટેલ ને તાવ કરો શાક બનાવતા નથી આવડતું કે વાંધો
હરેશભાઈ તમે ભલા વર્ષો આખો વિડીયો ની પત્તે એટલો કટિંગ કરી ચાલો.
10 મિનિટ તો થવા આવી છે.
મને કોઈ ગાડી 5 મિનિટ ભાઈ તું તાનો છોડી હતી.
બોલ કેમ ફાડરમાં પરસાદી લેવા આવ્યો? બોલ ફાડરમાં પરસાદી લેવા આવ્યો. બીજા પૈસા પાછા આપજો. હાલ હાલ
એલા નહીં એટલે બીજી કોઈ નથી.
ના ના હાલ આમ આમ ફોન પકડી રાખ હલાવતી અમે ફાડર
અમે બધા ફાડરે પરસાદી લેવા આવ્યા છે.
તમે બધા આવજો.
તમે બધા આવજો.
ફાડરે મજા આવે.
ફાડર બહુ મજા આવે.
ફાડરવાળા મેલડીમાનું મંદિર, અહીંયા બધા તાવા કરવા આવે છે. આ પ્રકાશભાઈ છે, હરેશભાઈ છે, પિન્ટુભાઈ છે, આ અમારા પટેલ છે. કાના જાડી હોય તો છે પાલળ પાલળ કરી નાખ્યા, કાંઈ ન હરે.
અંધવાળું પડે તો કે કેવું થાય ને
એમ નહીં, એમ તો સડી જ જાય છે. પછી આમ જાડી હોય ને તો પાતળી કરી નાખી. કેટલો દીકરા
નાખો ટેમેટા.
આ નિલેશભાઈનો તાવો છે. નિલેશભાઈ તાવો કરે તો જ શેઠ આવે છે.
હવે તમે વિડીયો ઉતારો છો ભાઈ સડાઈ દીધા બધાને ધંધે.
જો આ મનોજ કુમાર શેઠ છે એ તાવો છે એમનો.
હાલો આવા દો મલાવાજી
મમ્મી પાસે
કાંઈ નો થાય.
હલે નાખો તો હલાવશે બે આઈ ચલો
હિરેનભાઈ સલાડના કારીગર કીધી જાઓ.
બોલો બોલો.
કેમ લાગ્યું પણ સલાડ એક નંબર ને ઝૂમ કરો સલાડ માથે આમ બાજુ બધાને શાક હોય છે. હાલો કેમ લાગ્યું મિત્ર? એક નંબર તો વાંધો નહીં લ્યો કાપોલભાઈ. હા મને સલાડ જે ગમે ત્યારે નાખું મીઠું હોય છે ને
અરે દાદા ઓલું શાકમાં આમ જોતા રહી ગયો.
પેલા મંદિર
આવશે જ તે. હાલો ઘરે આને મૂકવા જવા બહુ રોય રોતો નથી પણ રિહાણા એટલે આવજો ફૂલ શાક
હજી થોડુંક ચડવા જ દો.
ઓલું ડબ્બો પડખેનો